Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and have you ever wanted to make a wedding ring quilt? Well, that is definitely a lot of curved piecing if we do it traditionally. However, OESD has come out with a file for embroidery machines that does all of the work for us. All we need to do is sew those tiles together. So here's the block that I'm talking about. It is a wedding ring quilt. And this is 4 blocks, which makes the ring. So you can either have them come inside, or they sort of make a ring as you put them all together. Now normally this takes curved piecing, but when we're doing it with our sewing machines and our embroidery machines, there's no curved seams. The embroidery machine will do it all. So you can do this quilt and many quilts with this file from OESD. Here's an example of one of the blocks. And when I print out patterns, I do like to print them out in black and white. And that way I can sort of judge how I want the colors to appear. And sometimes I can just color them in. So this file contains multiple layouts for the wedding ring, and this is the one that I was working on. So we have lots of different styles, and those are all of the blocks that we're able to make. So at the end of the directions, we do have templates, and we do have the number right here that's going to correspond. So I have that 08 that matches that 08, and be sure to print these out at 100%. 08 and 06 are the same, except there's a centered piece of fabric here, and in this one there is not. And that is the one I have here. Now this is a very easy block to make, but I have some personal tips that I would like to share with you along the way. Before I get into those tips, I do want to share some of the products that I have used to keep this so beautiful. It is flat, there's no puckering, and all of those points match up perfect. Even when we look at the back, we can see how beautiful that is. So the stabilizer is important. So I have a combination between the fusible woven and this fleece. The fusible woven does come in a black or a white. So I was able to use the appropriate ones. And the fusible fleece just gives this a nice shape. So afterwards, when we are done, all we will need to do is put some backing on it and quilt those layers together. That fleece is enough if we want, or we can add an additional batting. So the first layer that we're going to use is this fusible woven. So it's fusible and it is a woven fabric. And that is going to make sure that anything that we stitch on is not going to stretch. So that is the first thing that is going to go on the back. And then we're going to put on this lightweight fusible fleece. So I have this ironed down, and then this will go right on top. And I do like to have one just a little bit smaller than the other. This piece, I do need it to be enough to quilt the pattern, but it doesn't need to be the entire size. Once this is all fused on, you can really see how stable this is. It's not very thick, so we can either leave it the way it is or even add an additional batting. Now these pieces are appliqued on, so I'm going to use a fusible web to put these on as I am doing that heavy embroidery. So I am going to be using the soft web. It is nice and soft, so it doesn't gum up the needle, and it really helps that fabric stay exactly where we want it to go. So here's an example of that one where all those products really can make a difference. I am, however, working on a vintage one. This is the same block. The difference is in the center here, I have vintage doilies and tablecloths, where this one just has that background fabric. So here is that doily that I've been working on. I've been cutting out those flowers and have put them underneath. To do that, I did iron that soft web over the entire thing. This is very delicate, so I do want to help add some stability. So to put this together, what I started with was a template. So this was just a piece of scrap stabilizer, and I put this on the machine and I just did my outlines. This gives me a few things. The first thing, it gives me an opportunity to see what it really looks like. From there, I'm able to do some marks. So for my vintage collection, I did decide on having a white background. I did put the vintage lace in the center. I have my pink corners, and then I've just done a little symbol representing my fabric. So this gives me sort of a guideline is how I'm going to be laying it out. Along those lines, you'll see I have a GT and a PT. That is green thread and pink thread. So now at a glance, I know how this is going to look. This is also going to save me a lot of stabilizer. So normally we have our square fabric and we hoop that. But if my project is only a small project, I have this much on each side that can be wasteful. So I do want to avoid that. And this is going to help me avoid that. I'm going to use a long strip of fabric. So this is how I would hoop my first piece. But when I lay that template out, you can see where I have this fabric here that will go to waste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this piece for the next side. This is where that first piece is going to go. Then when I finish it and I unhoop it, I'm going to slide that hoop up to the next part. So it's going to go here. So this piece and this piece are being shared. And to do that, this is why I like these templates. So I do a template and then I cut it out to a reasonable size that I feel comfortable with. And then I lay that out and I'm going to put it on my hoop. So I make sure I have enough on this side and I put my line here and I know this piece is going to be shared with this next block. So I do some lines on the side. So I know that's where my first piece is going to go. When it's done, I'm going to be able to move that fabric to a new side. So it's going to go here. This is that piece that is going to be shared. When I do that one, you will really see how it goes together. So I'm going to be able to use this whole strip of fabric. So I'm going to just iron on these pieces and I'm only going to deal with one piece at a time. But this is ready to go. I will need to make those applique shapes. We can put that soft web right over top and draw out the pieces, cut them, and fuse them on. And then I'm going to be able to cut them out. And I'm going to be using this file 08. The first piece that's going to get marked is for that center piece. So I have put on a light beige. Now I'm going to be able to take this to the iron, peel this back. So I'm going to iron this on. As I put this on and off, I am going to make sure that none of this back fabric gets caught up underneath. Now I can continue. The next one is going to be another placement. So I'm going to have that one piece on this side, and then it will go to this side. Once I've tacked down, I'm going to be able to do some placements for my corners. I'm going to be able to iron those corners on and then bring it to the machine, and I'm going to be able to finish stitching that. Those threads really do make a big difference on how beautiful that block turns out. So the one block is done. I'm going to be able to slide that over, find those centers, and when I go to put that hoop on, you're going to be able to see this is the last area. The embroidery is in the center, so it's not bothering that last block, and it's not going to bother the next block. So I'm going to be able to just continue and move this over until I run out of fabric. So this is now a quarter of that block done. That last row of stitching is going to be a guideline for us to trim the seam allowances. So we need to give this a good press and then turn it over, and we're going to be able to trim. And we need to trim it 1/2 inch. Now normally we do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but this time we are going to do a 1/2 inch. We're going to trim all the way around and then sew them together. Let me show you on the vintage blocks that I've been working on. So I do have 4 identical blocks that I was able to put that vintage lace in the middle. You can really see how that stabilizer has held that nice and flat. Now I'm going to be able to sew these together. So the black and red one, I did sew it so that the centers are together. So it would be like this. But we can also put them together so that we have that big block in the center. So I am going to match up this area right here. So I'm going to put my pieces together and then put a pin right through that center where I have that thicker edge of embroidery, and I'm going to match it up on this side. So those are going to go together. Keep your pin very straight up and down, and then as you hold that together, put in a second pin. Do not take this pin and move it because it will move the fabric. So keep it very straight and then pin. I pin on one side, I'm going to pin on the second. Now I can remove that pin. Now I'm going to stitch down. So I've stitched over that last row of stitching. Now when I open it up, I have perfect seams. And we're going to press these seams open. Using a 1/2 inch seam allowance really allows this to lay flat. A 1/4 inch, it would have a tendency to want to stick up more. That 1/2 inch helps it lie flat. Now I can flip those together and stitch on that last row of stitching. So those seams are perfect, and it is a beautiful flat block. That 1/2 inch seam allowance really makes a difference on how these stay flat. So for this particular quilt, I am on the lookout for some vintage linen. I don't mind that it's stained because I'm going to be able to cut around those stains, and I do want to make an entire quilt with that vintage linen. But in the meanwhile, I'm able to do some new fun fabrics to give me that wedding ring quilt. Now these are the same size, but they really do look different. And the fabric has a lot to do with it. I'll put some links in the description so that you can check out those files from OESD. And for a limited time, they are offering you, the viewer, a discount code. And I'll be sure to put that also in the description box. Thank you for joining me today on So Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I have a newsletter. It's all free under So Very Easy. And be sure to make every day a so-tacular day. Bye for now.